podium's facing this way, Eric. Oh,
Just these general.
so into the sun.
Minimizes the chair. And just want to make sure nobody.
If folks want or need to sit down, there are a few chairs here. Don't be shy.
It is a good point.
Okay, I would stop there. No?
If anyone needs a chair, that's not necessary, of course. It's not for the family, it's for the family and anyone else who might need to sit. Not everybody's legs will last, so. This works fine as well, yes. Kathy? Well, I guess we'll begin. All right. It's okay. Well, need a chair over here. Some on the concrete. Well, thank you everybody for coming today to pay our respects to our mother, John and myself, Adele Kohl. Obviously, passed in September 11th, 2024, Jewish month of Elul 8, in the year 5784. We appreciate that everybody made the effort not just to come here locally, but for those of you that flew in for this, obviously it's always short notice for this type of event, so we thank you, and I know my mother thanks you as well for making that effort and for being here, which I know everyone would say, of course we'll be there. Here you are, so thank you very much. Just to give a little bit of an outline of what we're going to be going through, it's pretty straightforward. We'll be starting off, once I've completed some opening remarks, we'll have an opening prayer, Ecclesiastes 3:1 by Nancy Stackler. Thank her for that. After that, we'll have some, so we're wording them, mini-eulogies, words spoken by a few folks to understand Adele's essence a little bit better. And those persons will be my brother John, Judith Calaora, myself, and then we'll shift over to some of the newer friends from Foxborough, Judy, and then some of the, I don't want to use the word old friends, but friends forever, and Toby will be saying a few words. And then also Mr. Jack Kersner, who my mother worked for decades, has kindly offered to say a few words. Appreciate that. It's kind of a addendum we ran across this week while we were going through my mother's things, a very short but nice letter that Hazel had written her, just as words of encouragement. It wasn't any particular occasion, but I think at the time Adele was feeling a little down. I don't know the year, and said something to Hazel, and Hazel gave her a written response, which we recovered, and I thought it would be pleasant to read that for everyone. After that, we'll switch to Ms. Brenda will be reading Psalm 23, The Lord is my shepherd, as we get closer towards the end here. And then we'll do the Mourner's Kaddish, and then the Kevurah. And just to give a little bit more explanation on what the Mourner's Kaddish is, I'll read you that if you're not familiar. Very simply, this is from Shabbat.org. One of the most sacred rituals observed by all Jews throughout the generations is the practice of reciting the Mourner's Kaddish, prayer for the merit of the departed soul. That's essentially it. It's typically said by one of the children of the departed, but we're going to thank Uncle Ellie, husband of my mother's late sister Nancy, and his daughter Mathilde, for assisting us with the Kaddish. Now, the Kevurah is the burial. It means literally the burial. And it's when we return the body to the earth that is its source. And this is the final act of caring. It is considered a great mitzvah or good deed to physically participate in the burial. Ideally, the whole grave should be filled in by hand, and in this case, I think we'll say where that's not likely or possible or practical, the coffin should be completely covered. So when we get to that part of the service, we have a shovel. We'll remove the covering of the ground, and those who would like to participate can take part in putting some of the dirt over the casket. And with that, let me turn it over to Nancy, who will begin with the opening prayer.
Do you want me to come up? Or do I
You
get
can
to
do it
there?
there, you stand here, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Fine, thank you. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace.
Thank you. So we'll move on now to the mini-eulogies, the words to describe a little bit more of Adele. And we'll start with John, and we'll follow with Judith.
A couple of weeks ago when I was packing to come here, I did not pack for a funeral. It didn't even occur to me that I would be attending one. Fortunately, to my surprise, my mom mentioned she wanted an informal, non-religious funeral, so that's how I dressed. And I see most of you did as well. But that wasn't the only thing that I learned about my mom when I got here, in fact. You know, they actually say that you learn a lot about someone when you live with them. But I say that you learn a lot about someone when you have to pack their house. And I'll tell you, I kind of knew, but I really learned, and Jack knows this, how meticulous my mom was.
Yeah.
She had notes and lists and reminders all over the house, marking both the things that she had done and the things that she would have to do. Just to give one example, on the side of the refrigerator was a full inventory of the entire contents of the freezer. Maybe she did that for us, but still.
That's funny.
She had filed meticulously all of her bank statements. She had kept all of her passports, all of her driver's license, all of her receipts, all of her recipes. I even found in her filing cabinet, in a file called a vacuum cleaner, the manuals from her Hoover vacuum cleaner, which she doesn't even own anymore. Then you move to her bedroom, you take out the sock drawer, and I know one of the neighbors was with me when we discovered this. Every single pair of socks was in a little cubby hole, individually placed. I didn't even know they made filing cabinets for socks. She found it. And then she also gave us a list, Brian and I, of all of her accounts, and every account had the beneficiaries identified, the co-owners identified, all of the passwords, all of the phone numbers of all of her agents. I mean, I don't know how many of you have gone through this process, but from what I understand, that doesn't happen all the time. Making this process much easier for all of us, but only someone of her meticulousness would do that. And then get to the rest of her house. All of her medical supplies, stocked. Kitchen, stocked. Bathroom, stocked. Office, stocked. And of course, even her collection, her famous collection of jackets, well stocked. And her collection of Elvis. And her collection of turquoise jewelry. And her collection of Homer White paintings. And her collection of Native American Western ornaments. And of course, also her collection of sons, nieces, and grandchildren, all meticulously and efficiently photographed, fingerprinted, and booked in uncountable number of photo albums which Uncle Ollie has kindly taken possession of on behalf of the family. I also discovered that she was an avid saver, financial saver, to the point of nervousness that every time she wanted to make a purchase, she would go to her advisor, so says the advisor, and ask, do I have money to get a new car? Which wasn't even new, it was 2015. Can I afford a trip, a vacation? And he would always say, yes, Adele, please, go right ahead. I came to understand as well that some of you folks who have done hikes with her oftentimes had a hard time keeping up with her as you visited the local forests. And that was, I understand, even till quite recently. I came to understand as well that friends and coworkers would come to Adele because of her composure, her calmness, and her empathy, qualities valuable for support. And that composure was such a point that in the week and a half I was with her, she never cried, and she almost never even sweared. She did once, but it wasn't for what you thought. She almost never even sweared. And all of this, despite the fact that Adele did not have time to come to grips with her condition. It happened so fast. She had no time to adapt to the fact that the end was nearing. But this very speed at the same time was also a blessing. And I say that because she almost completely avoided chemotherapy. She had only had a half a dose once. She almost completely avoided physical pain, despite that pancreatic cancer is one of the most painful cancers, I'm told. And even on the day we finally brought her to the hospital, none of us realized the gravity of her situation. I mean, we were just sitting in the waiting room of the ER, just kind of twiddling our thumbs, totally unaware, and Adele was totally unaware as well, what her situation was at that time. But she was lucid till the very end. As many of you know, on the evening of September 10th, we were going through her contact list on her phone and calling quite a few of you for those goodbyes. Until 1:10 a.m. in the morning, when her breathing became more and more difficult. And in her lucidity, even at that moment, she made the decision to take herself off of the medications, the 4 or 5 medications that were maintaining her vitals in a stable condition. And then she switched to CMO, comfort measures only. And that's a switch where obviously the patient is in the best possible conditions for those remaining moments. And at that time is when I began to hold her hand. I don't know how long it was until she lost apparent consciousness. Shortly thereafter, the nurse came over. We both on either side of the bed, understanding that, as I think Elise just pointed out, patients, even unconscious, can oftentimes hear right up until the last moments. We spoke in a positive and a happy voice about the great life that she had, about the family that loved her. And as we did this, the heart monitor was trickling down 80, 60, 40, trickling down to 0. And in that moment of reaching 0, her soul began the next chapter on its journey. Now, if you see it this way, you realize then it's not so much as a loss that we're here to lament. It's a transition that all of us face and all of us should celebrate.
Thank you, John. The moment's pause. Reverend Judith, do you have a few words? Wherever you'd like.
Yeah.
So hello everyone, good to see you all in spite. I'm very happy to see a lot of familiar faces here, so thank you. This weekend I was attending a performance where the performer said, quoting someone, said that there is more time than life. And I feel like that statement could not be more true to me than, well, right now, actually. So the plans that I will sort of make in my mind based on what's going well and what's not going well, and then I'll say, oh, you know what, that one needs to be put on hold till later. That whole concept, I'm going to throw that out the window, and I hope you do too, because everything that you think of right now that you want to do, you better do it, okay? Because what I remember most, at least in the last 12 years of my life, where my aunt, at least in presence and in body, started to replace the loss of my mom, was how excited she always was for the next thing. Like, we would sit for hours and just talk about her next trip to this John Carver Inn, or like where she liked to go to eat at these places down in the Cape, and then they would go to these like national parks, and then they would go to get, you know, a cog train on the White Mountains, and she was always just talking about all these cool things she got to do. I thought to myself, maybe I should start bartering with the senior centers and performances and just go on these trips with her. Because I was pretty sure that she, having gone to Alaska with her for my graduation present with Brian and my mom, I knew she was the coolest person to travel with. And even in spite of the fact that Brian and I would like stay out, like, because it was my 21st birthday and it was like Beaver Creek, Yukon territory, and the sun never went down, and he and I were like drinking till 7 in the morning because we have no idea that it's 7 in the morning because the sun never set. And my mom is like, ah, they're fine. And Aunt Adele is like, we have to go send a search party out for them right now. So as I'm telling this, I'm like hailing back to what John just said about the meticulousness and the organization and the needing to know that each sock is in its own compartment. I think Brian and I were like socks. She needed to keep the pair together, and she needed to know where they were at all times. And my mom was like, they'll be fine. And when I think about Aunt Adele, she's not my mom, but she's like a composite of my mom and my sister, which I've always found to be really, really cool, because it's like I gained a new family member. She was different than the aunt I had growing up, and she had become someone very new and special to me in the last 4 years. So I really don't know what else to say. All I want to say is I thank her so much for stepping in when I really needed someone during the last 4 years. My family was there too, but I needed someone who was more objective. She is my family, you know what I mean, my immediate family. Sometimes they know too much, right? But she knew it all. She took it like a champ. She was so composed. She never judged anyone, ever. And if she got mad, it was so tiny little burst, and then she got mad at herself for being mad, you know what I mean? She almost immediately regretted it. But I'll say one last thing. I was in Colorado this weekend for work, and I just had random YouTube on while I was packing my suitcase. Elvis Presley comes on. Jailhouse Rock, and it was unbelievable because it was out of the blue. And then I was watching an Adam Sandler stand-up thing on Netflix, and Schneider, what is his name, his buddy, comes out on stage totally randomly doing an Elvis impersonation. Not a bad one at that. And I thought, this is like 2 days in a row. My aunt has just died, and if you don't know, my aunt like worshipped Elvis. And when I talked to her about Elvis in the last year, she blushed like a 15-year-old girl. And I was like, I am amazed that that feeling has stayed with her. And last but not least, I know I said the last thing, but this is not nice. Since she's passed, I have seen more cats come up to me, and like cats I don't even know. I pulled my car into my driveway, just one town over, and suddenly these neighborhood cats start coming into the, I kid you not, I cannot make this stuff up. There were 3 cats that came to me. I've never seen anything like this before. It was as though she was communicating through them. One cat I recognized, the other cat my neighbor has, and he got out, and the third cat, I don't know who that was. So I like to think maybe it's a little bit of her in all of these things, and I hope you can find her in a lot of it, all of these things. So thank you.
Okay. to the next.
I'll be right back, but if I don't drink any water, I'm gonna pass. Do they have water? Yeah.
So next is my turn for a short eulogy I had written in the last couple of days. I would like to read it now. Good afternoon, family, friends, and loved ones. To all, I want to pay you all a tribute of thanks, not just for being here today, but for the obvious reasons underlying your attendance. Everyone here has a strong connection to my mother, and that love, that bond, that trust, and those memories are now not lost, but only strengthened in our gathering to pay our final respects to this wonderful and diverse woman. My mother had numerous epochs in her life, spanning 80 years, of which I will focus on the portions in which my brother and I have shared a part in. Not to devalue those first 25 years previous to our entering the chronology, but all tales must find their place to commence and to continue forward from there. I remember fondly our early years on Elm Street in Foxborough, sharing a bunk bed with my brother in that small apartment. I remember when I was sick or in need, my mother would be there by my side. I remember her tolerance for the mischief I would engage in, from jumping off the second floor balcony into the snow after that winter blizzard of 1978, to the, and I blush some here too, the time that I set ablaze the top of the nearby hill trying to melt glass bottles with a lighter. Numerous fire trucks later, all was well. I remember how my mother got us a new home on Baker Street in Foxborough, and how this palace of many rooms, as I thought of at the time, had us each our own bedroom and an office for her typing jobs. I remember how my mother, with that early IBM wheelwriter, at first allowing me to dictate my schoolwork while she did the typing, and how over the years the typing shifted to me. Typing was such an ingrained part of our home life that I emerged as one of the best and fastest in my high school class. A simple skill, yet one that has served me well throughout my life and career. I often wondered if I had half the skills of the musical instrument that my mother taught me with a keyboard, if I would not be playing in a national orchestra touring Europe somewhere. Well, perhaps that's a bit of an embellishment. But this simple yet useful life skill was just one of many that my mother imparted in me. After I left college, and then for California, my mother always supported me. She was not happy to see me move across the continent, nor that my brother had set the example by himself moving completely out of the country. But supportive she always was. The opportunity for her own travel increased, of course, and quite a few vacations of hers were in San Francisco, in the redwoods north thereof, and other interesting and mystical places within that beautiful state. Perhaps the most enjoyable week of her in California was when her sister Nancy spent with us both a week touring the state. Nothing pleased my mother or Nancy more than for the two of them to spend time together. I got to be the chauffeur in both the son and nephew those days, and I'll always have those memories of them both. Judith saved me the trouble of speaking of Alaska, and she did it better than I certainly could. The post-gym epoch, as I referred to it as, inevitably began in earnest, late in arrival, but not without years of better times yet to experience. From this point on, a transformation in my mother occurred, and the results were remarkable. Her physical appearance bettered. She became far more fit, far more active, had more energy and a zest for life I had not seen before. Again, as Judith mentioned, so well. Her move to her last apartment began a series of years of senior center activities, lunches with friends, hiking, traveling, and more. And I believe it was one of you involving a recent canoe trip during a thunderstorm that required immediate refuge under a tree for fear of being struck by lightning thrown by Zeus himself. She was always active and always doing something to stimulate her mind, to socially interact with others, to be carefree, and to simply enjoy her well-earned final years. All of these kept her young, healthy, sharp, a joy to be around. Her wonderful friends of this best and last epoch, in attendance today, will attest to every word I've said. Your presence confirms it. Thank you. So it was with such irony that in the middle of this greatest portion of her life that she would find it end so abruptly. Fate is indeed a fickle master, and at times will take from us those whom we least expect to see go. But in my mother's case, as noted earlier, there was no long period of pain, no long period of uncertainty. Now, in the next epoch that has begun for us all, that with my mother Adele no longer with us, we will always have our memories of her and her example as a guide. My outlook on the world has changed dramatically by her example. to live more in the moment, to do it now, not to wait, and to focus on the simpler things, like how I overcomplicate my life, how unnecessary it is, and the toll it takes unnecessarily so. By her example, to live well, to be with friends, to be outside in the fresh air, and to have that positive attitude that she always had during that final, simpler, happiest time of her life. I will always miss you, Mom. We all will. Thank you. Thank you. All right, moving on to the next phase of our eulogies today. In the category of newer friends, Judy, would you like to say a few words? And wherever you feel comfortable to do so.
Anyway, well, Adele and I have known each other for almost 40 years. And we were just talking recently about where and when we met. And neither of us could remember exactly. But I knew she had her typing business and I had a graphic design business. And I think we met at the printer. And no matter, we just were talking and trying to figure that out. But we went to exercise classes for years together, and we used to go on day trips with friends and at the senior center, and she loved going on those trips, and she went to so many historical places, and really she was a great companion and friend to a lot of you. So when I sold my house in Foxborough, she kind of pushed me to look at the apartments where she had moved, and I ended up moving into one that's in the building in front of hers. And so along with her neighbor, Kathy, and I, we would just hang out together. We would walk the neighborhood. We would share meals. We'd be guinea pigs for each other's new recipes. And then we had a lot of fun playing games. Sorry, Quiddler, those are some of our favorite games that we love to play. And then we knew how much she loved Mahjong. That was her thing. So we shared a lot of little adventures, along the way. But when she got her diagnosis, she knew it was terminal. The doctor was very upfront about everything. She set in motion, preparing for the inevitable, as they've said. She calmly and quietly made arrangements, telling us what she wanted, and it was heartbreaking for us, her friends, yet it was inspiring to see the way she handled everything. So what an example she set when facing death, which came so fast. And she did it with such grace. It's just, she amazed us. So she left us too soon, and I guess we must be reminded that to live each day as if it's your last, because you'll surely be right. So we'll miss you, Adele, and I will miss you, my friend.
Thank you, Judy. From the category of friends forever, I think is appropriate. Toby would like to say a few words.
Okay.
Read my chicken scratch here. Good afternoon. It is comforting to see so many of you here today to pay respects to my very dear friend Adele. I've known her for 80 and a half years. It's hard to believe, but time flies, even today. Having many good times together. It all started in 1944, when my mom Florence unexpectedly had twin baby girls. The doctor and everyone else was so surprised, as I was born breech and went undetected, until a nurse had to tell the doctor, there's another baby in here. Hazel, Adele's mom, was so shocked that her high school pal had twins that she gave birth the very next day. From that infamous beginning, Adele and I were bonded for life. As youngsters, our families had lots of good times at Nantasket Beach, Paragon Park, at my grandmother's cottage, and at the cottage of her Aunt Millie. To this day, I have paintings hanging in my house from both places. Activities with our mother. I have many memories of us, especially doing activities with our mother. To concerts and to my art shows held at Marina Bay, walking on the boardwalk and eating ice cream. We loved our desserts first. Adele's last two kitties, Punky and Smokey, were loves until it came time to have their nails cut. I clipped their nails, having to wear a padded vest for protection. Well, Adele held on to the cat. I held on to the nails. Adele appreciated my many photos of them, especially the portrait of her black and white cat that she asked me to paint to memorialize him. Adele was so excited when she adopted Halo Boy, a retired trotter who was a harnessed racehorse. I had the pleasure of riding him, but not until Adele had to help me mount him by giving me a milk carton to step on so I could reach the saddle. Accompanied by my friend Hansel and her friend Neil, we attended many powwows, one of Adele's favorite pastimes. She loved wildlife, nature, and had the true Native American spirit. Adele and I loved country music and enjoyed seeing many country musicians perform. At one concert, the temperature was so hot we had to be sprayed with hoses. Last but not least, we celebrate our birthdays together every year, except when I lived in Florida. Mostly at the town spa or at Maxie's. It was our tradition to give each other our yearly calendar. A horse one for her and a cat one for me. Now I stand here at the very end of Adele's life, sharing my stories of our close friendship, so strong that it will never be broken, not even by death. I will miss you and love you, Adele. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next category.
Could I contribute something?
Absolutely, yes.
I'd like to take you back to the early days in Sharon, the good days, not necessarily uncomfortable days. But Gail and your mom, Adele, loved horses. And she had Halo Boy. And Gail had her horse. Trail rides. Just going to the barn and working together. The camaraderie and the good feeling. So that was an important aspect of your mom's life and Gail's life. The other thing is, you two guys were born just about the same time that our two daughters were born. So there's a relationship very strong. Even though we don't see each other, that relationship is there. And it will last. So we will miss Adele, without question.
10 days older.
That's true. This year we are told it's a big number.
55.
55.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Thank you very much. All right, Jack, if you'd like to say a few words, moving on to not just the professional, but also the personal. We have both. Jack.
So I'll be brief. I was Adele's boss for, I don't know, 30 years, 25 years, something like that. But I knew Adele, she typed my doctoral dissertation for $1 a page. She said, "I'm sorry, I gotta charge you so much." So that sort of gives me license to tell you what she liked and what she meant, at least to me. Reese's peanut butter cups. That's what she liked. Native American knickknacks everywhere on her desk. That's what she liked. Cats and horses and sightseeing on bus tours. That's what she liked. And food, especially pancakes and spoodle soup and giant chocolate chip cookies, and once in a while a Kersner Associates Chinese food lunch. That's what she liked. She was Adele my belle. It was her nickname, the one I gave her, because, well, just because. It's what I called her for over 30 years. In the end, Adele was the glue that held our practice together through all of the ups and downs of our work life. True, my wife held me together. People like Lisa and Nancy were here, and of course Karen. They were largely responsible for the reputation and longevity of Kerzner Associates to this day, over 40 years later than when it started. But Adele, her work ethic and patience and dedication made it possible for all of us to do what we love to do. As a few of you know, I had this little penchant, a little quirk, to assign a number to everybody. And Nancy was number 14, and Lisa was number 9, and everybody had a number. Don't judge me. And of course, I was number 1. But Adele, she was truly number 1. She was what the workday started with. And 10 hours later, she would look exactly like she did at 7:30 in the morning. No matter what mishigas I was up to, or problems I created while trying to steer this big ship, Adele was by my side. She was tireless. She was a trooper. She was loyal, and she'll always be Adele, my Belle.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
All right, as I mentioned in the beginning, there's one more to read, which I will do on behalf of Adele's mother, my grandmother, Hazel. Written certainly a number of years before 2004 at Hazel's passing. So those last few years she wouldn't have been able to. Yes, so it's short. It goes as this. That's okay. I'll speak now. Dear Adele, you said something that I think is totally untrue and unfair to yourself. Quote, I'm not talented, unquote. Adele, you may not be an artist, but you can and do so much that is important. First of all, you are strong emotionally, sensible, intelligent, loving, caring, dependable, have a sense of humor, very capable, and much more, such as sweet, personable, and good company. You're honest and fair, and also pretty. You are an excellent secretary, you earn money, and are valued in many projects. You can ride a horse, cook, drive a car, and have done some paintings. You appreciate beautiful scenery and more. You are a very well-rounded person, and most of all, a good mother, daughter, sister, aunt, niece, and friend. Not everyone is an artist, and not every artist has all these qualities you have. So be kind to yourself. You are your own work of art and admired by many. Your very loving mother, Hazel. Date unknown. Okay. In the closing prayer at this time, Brenda will read Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd.
There's a modification.
Or what she has
Or
chosen for
something
us
else.
today.
Yes. As I've been asked to do a reading, I felt as though this was very much in keeping with Adele and our feelings for Adele. And it's called We Remember Them. At the rising of the sun and at its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and the chill of winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. As long as we live, Adele too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her.
Thank you. So just some administrative for those, everyone should be aware that at 2:30 after the service, we'll be meeting at the West on Center, a restaurant less than 10 minutes from here, along the fence post there. If you want the directions, or at least the address, please help yourself. And we look forward to seeing you all there at 2:30. Next is the Mourners Kaddish, the Jewish memorial prayer by Ellie and Matil.
Ben, would you like to do that now, or do you want to wait?
Let's do this, and then thereafter, then we'll lower.
Well, actually, Matil is going to help me a lot. 50 plus years ago, I went back to Israel for Yom Kippur War, and I got injured, so I cannot really talk very smoothly. So she's going to help.
Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah, ve'omad v'yirah ve'amlech ma'uteh, v'chayachon u've'yomechon u'v'chayeh dachol beit Yisrael, v'gala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarah le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarah v'yishtabah v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yit hadar, v'yit haleh, v'yit halal, shemei dekodesha brihu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiran b'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi shema rabbanim shemaya, v'hayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom v'rimamav, hu yasei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen.
Thank you. Now the casket will be lowered. Portion is noted. Kevira, we'll take turns. Whomever would like to shovel some of earth back over the casket.
go then. It's okay. Can we go on the side?
Yeah, of course. Just be careful on the left. And then the front gets very different from the back.
And just as a small reminder for those of you who may be interested in where Hazel's grave may be, it is literally 14 and a half feet in this direction.
And Millie's like 2 rows
1976.
Ellie?
together.
You want to give a quick tour? There's Millie, and I believe there may be some others of the family. Otherwise, we'll see everybody who wants to participate in the reception. Please come at 2:30. See you there. Linda, is there anything else final that would normally be said, or?
No, we thank you all for coming. May her memory be a blessing.
I
at Hazel and Morris's grave. So it's still recording. That's what I think.